And so to wrap up, let's talk about the why and the how of embracing PEP 484. Let's go ahead and get started. One of my favorite parts of embracing type hinting and the use of annotations is that we can encourage type stability. And type stability is very, very important from a function perspective in order to have a smooth API feel, or a smooth API interface, I should say. And so what does this mean, or what does this actually look like in practice? Well, this means that if I play our game of FizzBuzz, right, where if we have, right, something that's divisible by 3 and divisible by 5 or contains 3 or 5 in its string version, I scream out FizzBuzz, right? If it's divisible by 3 or it has 3 in its value, right, as a string, I just produce fizz. For 5, I produce buzz. Otherwise, I just produce the number itself. And so when we run this, we see our game of FizzBuzz is indeed being played correctly. I say 1, 2, fizz, 4, buzz, fizz, 7, 8, and then on 15, it's divisible by both 3 and 5, so I say fizz, buzz. But if I were to actually use the output of this function, the very first thing that you can see right away is that I need to say, if is instance, right, this output, is it a string? Because if it is, I need to call the .upper method. Maybe I really want to shout out my answer. But if it's an integer, well, integers don't have a .upper method. And so I want to make sure that I very explicitly check for this, or else I'm going to run into an attribute error here. And you can see, even though I've supplied type hints, I can say that, oh, this generator produces an iterable that's either going to be a string or an int. We can start thinking a little bit more deeply about the types that our functions takes in and the things that it produces here. And what you can very quickly see, that working on an iterable that produces heterogeneous types, meaning very differently structured types, it'd be a different story if I produced, right, a float or an int, because those are protocol-wise or implementation-wise, right, very similar. But since I'm producing strings and integers, which have none of the same methods and don't even work with each other, we run into some actual hurt here with our program. And so just seeing that we produce an iterable that could be one thing or the other, it should cause us to reflect on our code and say, you know what? This function is not type stable, meaning I can get very different outputs from it, in this case, depending on what step I'm on. And we think about iterating over something. We want to be able to work with each of those individual elements in the same fashion, unless we're also tracking some external or additional state on top of that. And so what I might do to fix this program, I might think about ways that I could get rid of this string or int and just return a single type. In this case, right, I could produce something like a tuple, and I'm going to say that the first element of that tuple is an integer, or is an int, right? That's going to be the value that I'm on. And I could say that the second thing that this tuple, or the second piece of this tuple, is going to be a list of strings here. And if we alter our program, our type hint, to this, and then abide by that, of course, we can start to see a little bit more usability in our program. And so I'm going to collect terms here. I'm going to say, if we check just 3, I'm going to get rid of the both check. I'm going to append fizz. And if we check 5, and I'll make sure that this check is also performed no matter what, then I append buzz in this case. Finally, no matter what, I'm going to yield out, right, my tuple, and I can yield out n, and I can yield out my terms. Now, when I iterate over my generator here, you can see very easily that I can access both the individual items, right, my integer, what round I'm on, as well as any terms, any things that were shouted out. And by using a list, I can capture both components of the FizzBuzz. And ultimately, I've reduced the number of lines of code that were in my function just by thinking about the types that I'm producing from my function to make sure that my function produces things that are type stable, meaning It's not going to change its output depending on, or the type of its output depending on its input. Now, this does make for a much smoother application or a much smoother API because I can do things like unpacking on this. I can say print the join of the first thing in shout. And so if I really wanted to say fizzbuzz, I still have that capability, but now I can work with these elements without saying, oh, if this instance, if this thing is currently an integer or if it's currently a string, do this, otherwise do that. So this is one of the strengths that I would say is thinking about types, thinking about the types that your functions take in and thinking about the types that your functions produces. And so this is all revolved around adding type hints into new code. But what about adding type hints into old code? There's a lot of us who are sitting in this field of, I have a huge code base. It's not type hinted at all whatsoever. Am I really expected to go into, say, 100,000 lines of code and start adding type hints everywhere and start running MyPy or something like that in order to statically analyze it? I would say, well, probably not. Type hinting old code bases that have been in production for a long time, you may have fruitful results, but I can guarantee you that type hinting 100,000 lines of code is going to take a lot of developer hours, especially if you do it appropriately. And so instead of revisiting a ton of old code, unless we just happen to have spare time on our hands, instead of type hinting old code, we can start type hinting new code and then bake in our assumptions about that old code. So if my previous code base had some old code that was not type hinted at all, instead of going back in here and saying, well, this produces an integer, because this might actually not hold up to be true in any case, or in some cases, when I develop new code that uses old code, I can simply call my old code and I can say, you know what, trust me, this is going to be an integer. I've been working with this code base for over a decade. I know that the result of old code of this function here, it's going to be an integer. And this lets me still leverage my new tools. It lets me leverage things like MyPy without actually being worried that I'm breaking something in an existing code base. So while I contribute new code, I can still incrementally incorporate my type hints and still get meaningful results from my static code analysis tools. But if thinking about types is changing how we think about our code, can we limit ourselves? Can we type ourselves into a corner? And I want to take one of Python's biggest strengths, a lot of the duck typing that doesn't fit very well into the classical kind of type hints or structured type hints. And so in this case, I have a function called add. All it does is it returns x plus y. And you can see here, I'm going to be passing two integers into this function, two floats, two complex, two decimals, two strings, two byte strings, two lists, and two counter objects. And Python, this code just works. And you can think, okay, let's write some type hints now. Okay, we know that x can be an int. Well, y can be an int as well. Well, x can also be a float, right? So y can also be a float. Well, in this case, x can be a complex, x can be a decimal, x can be a string. And what we'll start to see is as I add more and more of these type hints, we're going to get to something that's not very readable. And not just not readable, but doesn't make sense with the typing system itself. I can say that x and y are going to be an int, float, or a complex because those are all behavioralistically or homogeneous types. If I say, well, you know what, x could also be a string and y could be a string, all of a sudden we get a huge error. Because what MyPy is going to do is you're saying that x can be an int, float, complex, or string, and y can be that as well. So it would make sense to check the Cartesian product of all of these unions against each other. And what you quickly start to realize is, oh yeah, I can't add an int and a string. Therefore, this type hint is just wrong, If x is an int and y is a string, this breaks my code. Thank you, MyPy, for detecting that for me. But what we want to express to MyPy is, well, x and y are always going to be the same type. And this is where we get into actually type hinting the above. We use something called static duck typing. And this was implemented in Python 3.8 and we started seeing the use of a protocol because there was a huge understanding of saying, you know what, static types does not define all of the things that I do in Python. Instead, what I typically do, what I use functions just like this for, is these two things just need to have their double underscore add method implemented. Specifically, right, X will need to have a double underscore add method implemented, or Y would need to technically have R add, but we'll just focus on X having the double underscore add for this example. And so we actually need to type that a little bit differently. And we can enforce another thing. We can enforce that X and Y should be the same type. So I've created some type hints here, and I've created some code for MyPy to analyze. What this code is saying, or what these types are saying, is I'm going to write an abstract instance of a type variable in this case. It's called T. And effectively, all you need to know is that T can reference anything, but once it references one thing, it should always reference the same thing. And so you can see here, I'm creating a protocol. This is something that Python will expect to see. I'm saying, hey, anytime you encounter, or MyPy expects to see this, anytime you encounter something that is addable, know that it implements the add double underscore method, and we expect that the current object, right, itself is going to be of type T. The other thing is going to be that exact same type, right? And importantly, we're going to return that exact same type here. Now, there's going to be one caveat in this logic here, but what we can do is we can then create a new type variable, and we can bound it. We can say that, hey, my new type variable is going to be the parent of any subclass, anything that is addable. And now I can use this new type hint to annotate my code, and let's see what MyPy has to tell us. Now with our function checks, we see no issue in Python getting an int, a float, a string, a list. But if we decide to mix two, that's where we get an error. Our variable at of add same, it cannot be object. It has to be the same type that was passed in. And, right, even if we were to mix homogeneous types, like an int and a float, two things that can be added, well, we end up still having some working code because they're similar in the hierarchy. So what that tells us is that MyPy is a very powerful tool, but also Python's PEP 484 type hinting is a very powerful tool. We can use it not to just document the explicit types or explicit type of objects that Python should expect or that our code should expect, but we can even define protocols, attributes that these objects should have, because this is what we do in duck typing. We're making assumptions about the object based on the methods that we're invoking, the attributes that we're calling. And so our typing system should support the same functionality if we want to accurately type Python code. And so with that being said, I want to take just a quick journey down what's new, specifically what's new with Python typing. Everyone's been talking about pyr check, which is kind of like the new, I'm not going to say MyPy replacement, but it does cover a lot of the same ground that MyPy has covered already. And the key thing about pyr check is that, one, it invokes its own language server, meaning that you can run one pyr check instance and send multiple files or multiple inputs back to it. And two, since it is using a server in this fashion, we can send incremental updates, which is actually quite cool. And so what I'll do here is I'm just going to make a temporary directory, and I'm going to dump a file into that directory. Pyr calls these projects. I'm going to dump a file into that directory, and it's going to just have a single variable definition. X, it's going to be a string, and then I assign it to a string. Pyr examines this, and it says, okay, you know what, you're in the clear here. If I swap this out for an integer, much like MyPy, well, we get a type error. But MyPy can already do static checking. We've already seen that. What about incremental checking? This is what the strength that pyr check has, because you're not going to use it just as a one-off command line tool. You're going to be using this on very large code bases. And what it can do is it can document an entire code base, and anytime that you change a file within that code base, it just needs to reanalyze the section of code that you have touched or rewritten. It does not need to reanalyze the entire project from top to bottom since it's running on a live server. And so what I'll do is I'll start with my same example here, test.py, and I'll start my Pyre server, and then I'll sleep for 2 seconds, and I'm going to make a change to my test.py. Specifically, I'm going to change that same variable declaration, and I'm going to make it faulty. And then we just run another incremental check, and we'll see that Pyre has some new information to give us. So originally it found no type errors. You can see that at the bottom of the screen. And then as soon as my sleep ran out and we asked for another check or what's changed, well, Pyre spits back out that, well, our declared types, it's not lining up anymore. You need to fix an issue here. You can think of this as having extremely usable and powerful integrations with your development setup, your IDE, because if we don't need to index, right, every file of our code base every single time we want to run a check, and we just work with the smallest differences, you can think that Pyre is going to have some incredible speed to it. And it, of course, is designed to be written fast. But what if you're on the other side? You have a code base that doesn't have any types, and you want to start going back and actually adding those types, whether it's worth it or not. Well, somewhere you might start is to use a tool like MonkeyType. And now MonkeyType goes through all of your code, goes through all of its imports, and tries to deduce the types that can be used based on code you've written. So here I have a module, and all I do is I define one function called add inside of it. Then in my script, I'm going to import that add function, and I'm going to call it just with 2 integers. And then we're going to run MonkeyType on our code. And when we run MonkeyType on our code here, we actually see that it created some stubs for us. It created some type hints for us. It says, you know what? Based on the code that I saw, this function add, I know, well, based on what I've written, right, this function can expect 2 integers. And if I add instead of float to my first value and I rerun this MonkeyType and I rerun MonkeyType, well, we know that X can take a union of either a float or an integer. Now, the thing that MonkeyType is going to do for you, it's going to come up with all of these different concrete types that you can call this function with, but it's not going to give you those abstract, those protocols that we just saw. So I would say that this is a good place to jump off from, but do expect that if you're using something like MonkeyType and you're really reworking a code base, you can very much expect that your code will change. Your final version of all your type hints is going to be different than the output of this tool. It's just a very neat static analysis tool. Again, right? We're not actually executing, or we are executing in this case, we're executing this Python code here. And we're catching, right, the types that are being passed in. This is going to be a hook into Python's function call. So there's some really cool tools out there, PyreCheck and MonkeyType. I encourage you to check them both out. And before we wrap up, I just wanted to share here are all the references for all the code that we've written or we've seen to demonstrate today. There's a lot of PEPs that have gone into Python recently, starting with, right, our function annotations and moving all the way forward. And of course, Python has quite extensive documentation on typing and annotations. That was a lot of Python code and typing. Maybe not necessarily a lot of typing on the keyboard typing, but typing in the sense that we use it in Python. I wanted to thank you all for coming today, and I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on type hints and where you use them and where you don't use them on Discord. Thank you all again for attending, and I'm looking very much forward to seeing you all next time when we answer the question, how do I check that my data and my analyses are correct? Thanks again, and I'll see you all soon.